Why does the villain cause physical discomfort for the audience? How was Rocket Raccoon actually filmed? Why was a 37-pound corpse of Chris Pratt brought onto the set? And how did this movie officially land in the Guinness World Records? The reality of the Guardians filming process is sometimes more shocking, frightening, and fascinating than the movie itself. The core feature of the High Evolutionary's look, brilliantly portrayed by Chukwudi Iwuji, is his face. It looks hauntingly stretched and almost lifeless, like a mask concealing something horrific. And this isn't CGI. Gunn adamantly insisted on 100% practical makeup. He wanted that specific tactile horror that is impossible to render on a green screen. He wanted the audience to feel discomfort on a subconscious level. We saw a similar facial effect in the original RoboCop, where Alex Murphy's human face was stretched over a steel frame. As a longtime fan of old-school special effects, Gunn was clearly inspired by that sense of absolute unnaturalness, where skin looks like a foreign element on the body. Every day, a complex silicone prosthetic was applied to Iwuji. Take note of the metal staples along the jawline and forehead. They look as if they are holding up a face that is about to slide right off. These staples weren't props added in post-production. They were physically embedded into the silicone prosthetic, making the mask heavy and uncomfortable. But James Gunn's obsession with practical effects wasn't limited to just the main villains. Take the sequence at Orgocorp, the massive headquarters of the High Evolutionary. This isn't just a space station made of the typical sci-fi metal and glass. It's a bio-engineered structure created from organic matter, bone, cartilage, and living flesh. In any other Marvel movie, this location would have been left entirely to the CGI artists. They'd just paint the walls over a green screen and call it a day. But Gunn ordered the construction of real, physical sets. The station's walls were made of special soft polymers and silicone that literally compressed under the actors' fingers. Now look at the Orgocorp sentries. They are dressed in strange, ugly, fleshy spacesuits. These aren't digital figures inserted into the background. They are dozens of real extras in incredibly heavy costumes, each handmade. Costume designers used a complex combination of foam latex and polyurethane to make the suits look like bloated muscle fibers. Inside these suits, the actors found it incredibly hot and difficult to move. Yet, it was this physical clumsiness that added a layer of chilling realism to the scene. When the Guardians fight their way through the station, their strikes land on real objects. The sparks, the slime, the flying chunks of fleshy scenery, all of it was filmed live. This gives every movement on screen a completely different sense of weight. Gunn wanted the actors to interact with real objects, even in scenes where using CGI would have been more logical. Remember that heartbreaking scene where Nebula carries a lifeless Star-Lord in her arms? It seems like a standard task for a stunt double or a digital model. However, for this scene, the team at the legendary Legacy Effects, the same masters who created Iron Man's armor, built a hyper-realistic mannequin of Chris Pratt. That is no exaggeration. When the mannequin was first brought onto the set, the crew was stunned. It looked so natural that it seemed as if Pratt was simply lying there with his eyes closed. To create the skin, they used a special translucent silicone that perfectly mimics human flesh, absorbing and reflecting light exactly like the real thing. Every pore on the face, every wrinkle, and every single hair on the beard was manually implanted by craftsmen using tiny needles. But the most important part was the weight. This wasn't some lightweight foam doll. The mannequin weighed about 37 pounds. This was critical for Karen Gillan. Gunn wanted her to carry a heavy body for real. This is exactly what gives the scene the realism you see on screen. In close-ups, you can see Nebula's muscles straining and how she adjusts to the weight. You can't fake that. Chris Pratt himself was simultaneously terrified and delighted. In interviews, he admitted it was one of the strangest sensations of his life, staring at his own body that looked like a genuine corpse. He even jokingly referred to the mannequin as his dead twin brother. This mannequin is a perfect example of how practical effects provide actors with a physical foundation for a truly sincere performance. If anyone was happier than most for the filming to end, it was Dave Bautista. For him, the role of Drax the Destroyer was not just a ticket to Hollywood's big leagues, but a grueling 10-year marathon of physical torment. In the early installments, applying Drax's makeup took an agonizing 5 hours. Bautista had to stand perfectly still the entire time, while a team of artists manually glued thousands of individual scars onto his massive frame. But the worst part was taking it off. The process of using harsh chemical solvents literally stripped away the top layer of his skin, leaving behind severe irritation for days. By the third film, Gunn decided to save his actor. Instead of thousands of separate pieces, the craftsman created a highly complex silicone vest. It was a precise mold of Bautista's torso that fit like a second skin. The edges of this vest were seamlessly blended with the skin on his neck and arms, cutting his time in the makeup chair down to an hour and a half. However, a new problem emerged. Inside this silicone shell, his skin couldn't breathe at all. Bautista admitted that after long filming shifts, they would literally pour out the accumulated sweat from inside the suit. Furthermore, maintaining the physique of a giant mountain of muscle with a minimal body fat percentage at 54 years old was becoming increasingly difficult and hazardous to his health. Bautista wanted to go out at his peak while he could still physically embody the Destroyer. In the Guardians finale, we see a Drax who wears clothes more often. This was a conscious concession to give the actor's skin a break. But even under the jacket, it's still the same Drax, created through sweat, blood, and tons of silicone. But if Dave Bautista suffered from having tons of silicone applied to him, another actor on set performed a true athletic feat just to get into the frame. Many people think Rocket is simply high-quality CGI paired with Bradley Cooper's famous voice. But in reality, behind this character stands one of Marvel's most underrated actors, Sean Gunn, the director's brother. Sean Gunn is Rocket's physical body. He spent the entire shoot in a tight gray motion capture suit. But there was one massive problem: the raccoon's height. To stay in the same frame as Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, and Karen Gillan, Sean had to spend the entire filming day moving on all fours or in a deep crouch. Imagine that, take after take, week after week. It is a colossal destructive strain on the back and joints. By the end of the trilogy, Sean was nearly 50, and he candidly admitted that his body was literally falling apart from such extreme positions. You might ask, why torture a living person like this if you can just draw everything on a computer? The answer is simple: eyes and emotions. When Chris Pratt looks at Rocket, he isn't looking into a void or at a green tennis ball on a stick. He is looking into the eyes of a live actor who is delivering a real fight, real tears, or real laughter. It is this chemistry between Sean and the rest of the cast that makes the CGI raccoon feel so hauntingly alive. The graphics are merely layered over Sean's performance, preserving his timing, micro-expressions, and the unpredictability of a human being. And what about Bradley Cooper? His work began during post-production, and in the third installment, it was the hardest of all. Cooper shared that the scenes involving Rocket's dark past were emotionally grueling. There were moments in the recording studio where he literally couldn't hold back tears while watching the screen. He intentionally tried to make Rocket's voice sound a bit more broken and aged to emphasize his difficult journey from a frightened test subject to a confident captain of the Guardians. By the way, there is one more filming secret. To make Rocket's fur look realistic when interacting with people, the production used real animatronics and stuffed models on set. When the characters pet Rocket's head or hug him, their hands are touching a physical object. This allows the studio lights to hit correctly and the fur to naturally compress under their fingers. Without this old-school method, the raccoon would always look like a fake pasted-in pixel. All these incredible efforts, Chukudi Iwuji's eerie makeup, Bautista's torment, the hyper-realistic mannequins, and the detailed costumes for the extras, culminated in a historic cinematic achievement. Few people know that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 officially broke the Guinness World Record for the most prosthetic appliances and special effects makeup used in a single film. Previously, this record had been held for 23 years by How the Grinch Stole Christmas, starring Jim Carrey. For the third Guardians installment, a team of 75 makeup artists created a staggering amount of work, over 22,000 individual prosthetic elements. This represents a colossal, almost unfathomable volume of meticulous manual labor. Gunn insisted on this so that even the most insignificant background alien would look like a real, textured creature with its own culture and history, rather than a blurry smudge on a green screen. At any given time, hundreds of extras in full, multi-layered makeup were present on set. It was the largest mobilization of makeup artists in the modern history of Hollywood. Why is all of this so important today? Because James Gunn reminded us all that cinema is the magic of human hands. It's the sweat and the sleepless nights in makeup trailers for the sake of a single perfect take. What moment in Guardians 3 impressed or moved you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit the like button, and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new deep dive movie breakdown.